Karen mocked my wheelchair-bound child, not knowing she was on live news. Pineview Meadows was a postcard of suburban perfection, rows of colonial-style homes, emerald lawns, and not a weed in sight. It was the kind of place where people paid a premium for uniformity, where the HOA's rulebook was thicker than a novel. I moved here 2 years ago for Emma, my 11-year-old daughter, who'd been through enough in her short life. Born with spina bifida, she used a wheelchair but carried a spirit brighter than the sun. I wanted a safe, quiet place for her to grow, to thrive. But Karen Hensley, the HOA president, had other ideas. To her, Emma's wheelchair was a flaw, and I was the father who dared to disrupt her perfect kingdom. Karen showed up at my door a month after we settled in, her designer sunglasses perched on her nose, a clipboard in her manicured hands. It was a warm May evening, and I was helping Emma adjust her new adaptive bike in the driveway. Karen's eyes flicked to the bike, then to the wheelchair ramp we'd installed, her lips tightening into a thin line. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I'm Karen Hensley, HOA president. We've had complaints about your modifications. The ramp and that bike are non-compliant with our aesthetic standards." I stood, wiping grease from my hands, my patience already thin from a long day. "The ramp's for Emma," I said, nodding toward my daughter, who was giggling as she tested the bike's hand pedals. "She needs it to get in and out. I filed the ADA exemption with the HOA. Karen's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Exemptions require board approval, Mr. Carter, and I don't recall seeing yours. Besides, this ramp is an eyesore. Surely you can find a more discreet solution." Pineview Meadows has a reputation to uphold. "Discreet?" I said, my voice sharpening. "You want me to hide my daughter's disability to make your neighborhood look pretty?" Her expression hardened. "Don't make this personal. I'm enforcing rules that benefit everyone. I'll expect a compliance plan by next week." She turned, her heels clicking on the pavement, leaving me to choke down my anger. I glanced at Emma, who was too focused on her bike to notice. Good, I wasn't just James Carter, single dad. I was a disability advocate who'd spent a decade fighting for kids like Emma, helping pass state laws for accessible schools and parks. I'd faced down bureaucrats and bigots. I thought I could handle one HOA tyrant. I underestimated Karen's venom. The trouble brewed slowly, like a storm gathering on the horizon. By summer, Karen's influence was everywhere. Neighbors who'd smiled at Emma now gave us sideways glances when I pushed her wheelchair to the community park. At the HOA's annual picnic, a woman I didn't know whispered loudly to her friend, "That ramp ruins the whole street's look." The HOA newsletter, penned by Karen, ran a column on preserving property values, with a veiled jab at unapproved structures. No names, but the target was clear. Our house was the only one with a ramp, the only one with adaptive equipment in the driveway. Then came the letters, official HOA notices, delivered weekly, citing violations. The ramp, Emma's bike, even a flower pot I'd let her paint with polka dots. Non-compliance fines, $50 each, one read. I ignored them, citing federal law in a letter to the board, but the response was a curt "under review." Karen's grip on the HOA was absolute, her allies too intimidated or enamored to question her. Emma felt the chill, her questions piercing my heart. "Why's that lady always mad at us, Daddy?" she asked one night, her brown eyes searching mine as I tucked her in. "Does she not like my chair?" "She's just fussy about rules," I said, forcing a smile. "You're amazing, Em. Don't let anyone tell you different." She nodded, but the doubt in her expression lingered. I hated that Karen's prejudice was touching her, dimming the light of the girl who'd taught me courage since her first surgery at age 2. I doubled down on my work, pushing for a new accessible playground in Pineview Meadows, hoping to show Emma and Karen that inclusion wasn't negotiable. By fall, Karen's campaign turned vicious. The HOA's private Facebook group, which I joined to keep tabs, was a hotbed of gossip. "Concerned about 1721 Birch Lane. That ramp looks unsafe. Why do they need all that equipment out front? It's tacky. Single dad, probably overwhelmed. Poor kid." Karen never commented, but her silence was endorsement enough, her influence steering every post. I reported the group for harassment, but the admins, Karen's cronies, dismissed my complaints. I confronted her at the community mailbox one morning after dropping Emma at school. She was sorting flyers, her posture rigid, her eyes cold. "You're bullying my daughter," I said, keeping my voice low. "The fines, the rumors, the stares. It's got to stop." Karen didn't flinch. "Mr. Carter, I'm upholding standards. If you're feeling targeted, perhaps it's because you're not adhering to our guidelines. That ramp, for instance, is for Emma," I cut in, my anger rising. "She's not a problem to be fixed. She's a kid, and you're making her feel like she doesn't belong." Her lips curled slightly. "Pineview Meadows isn't a rehabilitation center. We have an image to maintain. I suggest you focus on compliance, not drama." She walked away, leaving me to grip the mailbox for support. I wanted to tell her then about my work, how I'd helped pass laws that let kids like Emma go to school, play, live. But I didn't. Karen didn't care about facts, she cared about control. And I was too busy planning Emma's playground campaign to fight her directly. That was my mistake. The incident happened in November during a crisp Saturday at the community park. Emma had been invited to speak at a local news segment about her push for an accessible playground. She'd spent weeks practicing, her voice steady despite her nerves, her words full of hope. Every kid deserves to play. I was proud, nervous, and hyper-vigilant, knowing Karen lived nearby and loathed the project. The news crew set up near the park's swings, a bright, live on Channel 7 banner flapping in the breeze. Emma sat in her wheelchair, wearing her favorite purple jacket, her smile radiant as the reporter asked about her campaign. "I want a playground where I can swing with my friends," she said, her voice clear. "It's not just for me, it's for everyone." I stood behind her, my heart swelling when I saw Karen approaching. She'd been at the park, clipboard in hand, inspecting the grounds. Her eyes locked on the news crew, then Emma, and her face twisted with disdain. She didn't see the camera's red light, didn't know the broadcast was live. She marched over, her voice loud enough to carry. "This is ridiculous," Karen snapped, pointing at Emma. "Why are we wasting time on this? That kid's never going to swing. She's a liability. Her father's just stirring up trouble with this ramp nonsense." The reporter froze, the microphone still live. Emma's face fell, her hands gripping her chair. I stepped forward, my blood boiling, but the crowd, neighbors, parents, kids, reacted first, gasps and murmurs rippling. The cameraman kept rolling, capturing Karen's tirade, her finger jabbing toward Emma, her words slicing like knives. "Stop," I said, my voice low but shaking. "You're talking about my daughter." Karen didn't back down, oblivious to the live feed. "I'm saying what everyone thinks. She doesn't belong here, dragging down our property values with her equipment." The reporter, recovering, signaled the crew to keep filming. "Ma'am, you're on live television," she said, her tone sharp. "Do you want to clarify your statement?" Karen's face went white, her clipboard slipping from her hands. The crowd grew louder, some shouting, "Shame on you!" A mother with a stroller yelled, "She's a child!" The live feed cut to a stunned anchor, but the damage was done. Karen's words were out, broadcast to thousands, preserved forever. I knelt beside Emma, pulling her close. "You're perfect, Em," I whispered, my voice thick. "Don't listen to her." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but her chin lifted, defiant. Karen stood frozen, the crowd closing in, phones recording, voices rising. The reporter turned to me, microphone extended. "Mr. Carter, any response?" I looked at Emma, then at Karen, whose eyes were wide with panic. "My daughter's stronger than you'll ever know," I said, my voice steady. "She's fighting for a world that includes everyone. That's more than you've ever done." The crowd cheered, but I felt no victory. I just wanted to take Emma home, away from the woman who'd tried to break her. The fallout was immediate. By evening, the clip was viral, shared across X, Facebook, and news sites. HOA President mocks disabled child on live TV was the headline, paired with Karen's sneering face and Emma's tearful one. The public's rage was seismic. Just on Karen the bigot trended, with calls for her resignation and worse. Pineview Meadows became a battleground, reporters swarming, neighbors demanding answers. I kept Emma offline, shielding her from the storm. She didn't need to see her pain weaponized. But the truth was out, and Karen's reign was over. The clip of Karen Hensley mocking Emma on live television was like a match thrown into dry grass. It spread fast and burned hot. By dusk, it had racked up millions of views on X, shared with hashtags like Yuri, Karen the Bigot, and Justice for Emma. News channels looped the footage. Karen's pointed finger, her venomous words. She's a liability, cutting to Emma's trembling lip and my clenched jaw. The outrage was immediate and fierce. Comments online called for Karen's head, some demanding criminal charges, others urging Pineview Meadows to clean house. A petition to oust her as HOA president surged past 20,000 signatures overnight. In Nashi, Pineview prejudice trended, branding the neighborhood a symbol of elitist cruelty. I kept Emma inside, away from the storm. She knew Karen had said mean things, but I spared her the details, saying people were upset because they care about you. At the kitchen table, she sketched a playground with swings, her brow furrowed. "Did I do something wrong, Daddy?" she asked, her voice small. "No, Em," I said, kneeling beside her wheelchair, my heart aching. "You were brave. That lady was wrong, and people are making sure she knows it." She nodded, adding a slide to her drawing. "Will they still build my playground?" "Better than ever," I promised, kissing her forehead. But inside I was reeling, furious at Karen, guilty for letting her words reach Emma, scared for what this meant for my daughter's sense of safety. I was James Carter, a disability advocate who'd fought for accessible schools and parks, who'd helped pass laws to protect kids like Emma. I'd faced bias before, but this was different. This was personal, a dagger aimed at my child's heart. Outside Pineview Meadows was a circus. News vans lined the streets, their cameras trained on Karen's house, where the blinds stayed shut. The HOA's Facebook group was a war zone. Neighbors posted apologies. Others shared stories of Karen's bullying, fines for ugly mailboxes, threats over kids' chalk drawings. The group collapsed under the weight, admins shutting it down, but screenshots fueled the fire on X, each one a nail in Karen's coffin. Karen's downfall was swift and merciless. The HOA board called an emergency meeting that night, live-streamed to a ravenous audience. The community center was packed, neighbors' voices raw with anger. "She humiliated a child on live TV," a mother shouted, clutching her toddler. "Emma's campaign inspired my daughter to include her disabled classmate," another said, tears streaming. "Karen doesn't represent us." The board, sweating under the scrutiny, voted unanimously to remove her as president and issued a statement. "We apologize to Emma and James Carter for the harm caused." Karen wasn't there. She'd been advised to stay away, but her absence only amplified the verdict. The public dug deeper, and the findings were ugly. Local news exposed Karen's reign. She'd fined neighbors for trivial violations, $100 for a messy lawn, $75 for unapproved holiday lights, while ignoring her own infractions like an unpermitted gazebo. She'd misrepresented the HOA's power, intimidating residents into compliance, and diverted maintenance fees to personal luxuries. A new SUV, a spa retreat. When the paper published her bank records, the backlash was explosive. Lawsuits piled up. Neighbors sued for fraud. I filed for emotional distress and defamation. Karen's husband, a quiet accountant who'd enabled her by staying silent, moved out with their teenage son. Her daughter, a college student, posted on X, "I'm ashamed of my mother's actions. Emma deserves better." I caught a glimpse of Karen 2 days later at the grocery store. She was in the cereal aisle, her cart empty, her face haggard under a baseball cap. No trace of the polished HOA queen, just a woman who looked like she'd aged a decade. Our eyes met, and I braced for her usual arrogance, but she turned away, her hands shaking as she grabbed a box and fled. It wasn't vindication I felt, it was exhaustion. Karen wasn't just losing her throne, she was losing herself. Emma's playground campaign became a beacon amid the chaos. The viral clip drew donations, tens of thousands of dollars, enough for swings, ramps, even a sensory garden for kids with autism. The news station ran a follow-up, focusing on Emma's courage and my work as an advocate who'd pushed through accessibility laws that changed lives across the state. "James Carter is a father fighting for every child's right to play," the anchor said, showing Emma sketching her dream park, her purple jacket bright against the gray November sky. I watched with Emma, her smile shy but real, and felt a flicker of hope. Karen's cruelty hadn't silenced her. It had made her voice louder, but the victory was heavy. Emma was wary, her confidence shaken. She stopped wanting to play outside, saying, "What if people stare?" I coaxed her back with small trips to the park, but her eyes darted, searching for judgment. "Am I really a liability?" she asked one night, her voice breaking. I held her, my anger at Karen flaring anew, but I kept my tone soft. "You're my hero, Em. Always will be." As a therapist, I'd taught kids to embrace their differences, but protecting Emma from this hurt was a battle I was losing. The public's rage, meanwhile, was a tidal wave. Karen's name was a punchline. Karen Hensley trended alongside memes of her pointing, captioned, "When you hate kids but love power." Ex-users unearthed her old posts, smug boasts about keeping Pineview elite, now mocked relentlessly. Someone keyed bigot into her car, and her mailbox was vandalized with red paint. The bakery where she'd bought her welcome muffins banned her, posting, "We stand with Emma." Her church, once her social stage, issued a statement on embracing all God's children, a quiet rebuke. I didn't pile on. My fight was for Emma, not against Karen. I spent evenings helping her with her sketches, laughing with Sarah, our caregiver, over pizza. But Karen's words echoed, raising questions I couldn't ignore. Could someone so hateful change? Did she deserve the chance? I'd seen kids overcome trauma, but adults were messier, their biases rooted deep. 6 weeks later, the county held a public forum to heal the community. The community center was overflowing, the air thick with unresolved pain. I went not for myself, but for Emma, who'd said, "Tell them I'm not a problem, Daddy." She stayed home with Sarah, too young for the room's intensity, but her courage pushed me forward. The mayor opened, praising Emma's vision and my advocacy, noting how my work had made the new playground a reality. The crowd murmured, some clapping, others shifting, their silence a confession of complicity. I didn't want their cheers. I wanted a world where Emma felt safe. The floor opened and the room erupted. A nurse shared how Karen had fined her for a loud therapy van visiting her disabled mother. A father said she'd threatened to report his autistic son's disruptive laughter. Each story built a portrait of a woman who'd ruled through exclusion, punishing anyone who didn't fit her mold. Karen was there in the back, alone, her hands clasped tightly. She stood uninvited, her voice shaking. "I was wrong," she said, barely audible. "I thought I was saving Pineview, making it perfect. But I hurt Emma. I hurt James. I hurt you all. I saw her wheelchair as a defect, not a part of her strength. I'm sorry." Her words landed like a stone, the room silent but tense. No one clapped, no one consoled her. A few muttered, their anger raw. I watched, searching for the woman who'd mocked my daughter on live TV. She was gone, replaced by someone small, stripped bare, her pride shattered. I stood, my voice steady but heavy. "Emma's not a liability," I said, addressing the crowd. "She's a kid who wants to play, to belong. What happened here isn't just one person's fault, it's what we allowed. We can't erase the pain, but we can make Pineview a place where every kid counts. That's what Emma's fighting for." The crowd nodded, some tearful. Karen sat, her head bowed, and I felt a shift, not resolution, but a crack in the divide. Something was stirring, even if I wasn't ready to trust it. Karen's collapse continued. The lawsuits gutted her savings, forcing her to sell her house at a loss. She moved to a dingy apartment downtown, working nights at a call center to pay legal fees. Her son cut contact, her friends vanished, and Pineview Meadows buried her name, mentioning it only in hushed tones. I heard she'd started therapy, joined a group for community leaders who'd misused power. I didn't know if it was true, and I didn't dwell on it. My focus was Emma, who was sketching more, her playground designs now pinned to the community center's board. One evening in January, a letter arrived, handwritten on plain paper. It was from Karen. "James, I don't deserve your time, but I owe you this." What I said about Emma was unforgivable. I was consumed by my need to control, to make Pineview my vision of perfect. I saw her as a threat to that, not a child with dreams. I'm horrified by who I was. I'm trying to change, not for forgiveness, but because Emma deserves better. I've started volunteering at a disability center, learning to listen, to understand. It's small, but it's real. I hope Emma's okay. I think of her courage every day. Thank you for not letting my hate define you. You're a better father than I'll ever be a person. Karen, I read it twice. The words raw with shame and effort. It didn't erase the hurt, but it was a start. Proof that even the worst could try. I kept the letter not for Karen, but for Emma. A reminder that pain didn't have to win. Karen's letter stayed in my desk drawer. Its words a quiet weight I couldn't ignore. It didn't erase the sting of her cruelty, the tears in Emma's eyes, or the betrayal of a neighborhood I'd called home. But it was a confession, raw and unpolished, from a woman who'd lost everything to her own prejudice. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I'd spent my life helping kids like Emma rise above pain. Maybe Karen was trying to rise too, in her own fractured way. As a disability advocate, I knew change was hard, especially when it meant facing your worst self. Pineview Meadows softened by spring. The HOA, now led by Paul, a retired teacher with a gentle demeanor, shifted its focus to community over control. New accessibility paths lined the streets, and the playground Emma had dreamed of was taking shape. Ramps, swings, a sensory wall for kids of all abilities. Neighbors made amends, small but real. Mrs. Larson, who'd once whispered about our ramp, brought Emma homemade cookies. The Wilsons invited us to their barbecue. Emma's sketches decorated the community center, a testament to her vision and her laughter. Once cautious grew bolder. Pineview wasn't perfect, but it was healing, stitch by stitch. Emma was blooming, her confidence returning. She'd started a blog with Sarah's help, sharing her playground designs and stories about living with spina bifida. "I want kids to know they're enough," she told me, her eyes fierce. I framed one of her sketches, a swing set under a rainbow, and hung it in our living room. It was a reminder of her strength, but also of how close we'd come to losing it. Karen's words had cut deep, and though Emma was fighting back, the scars remained. Karen's name faded from Pineview's conversations, replaced by chatter about soccer games and school fundraisers. But I heard fragments of her life. She'd kept her call center job, working long hours to pay off legal settlements. Her apartment was a far cry from her old colonial mansion, her designer wardrobe sold to cover debts. Her son hadn't spoken to her since the fallout, and her friends, those HOA loyalists, had vanished. Yet she hadn't fled. She'd stayed, volunteering at a disability support center, helping families access resources, attending workshops on inclusion. I wondered if it was genuine or just a way to dull her guilt, but I heard she was quiet about it. No fanfare, no spotlight. Then came the grand opening of Emma's playground, a year to the day since Karen's outburst on live TV. The park was alive with color, bright slides, accessible swings, kids laughing as they played together. Emma had been invited to cut the ribbon, her wheelchair adorned with purple streamers, her smile brighter than the May sun. I stood beside her, my chest tight with pride, as she spoke to the crowd. "This playground's for everyone," she said, her voice steady. "No one's a liability. We all belong." The applause was deafening, and I blinked back tears, catching Sarah's grin from the sidelines. Afterward, kids swarmed the swings, and parents thanked Emma, some hugging her, others sharing stories of their own children's struggles. It was everything she'd fought for, everything Karen had tried to crush. I saw Karen then, at the edge of the park, setting up a booth for the Disability Support Center. She wore a plain blue shirt, her hair tied back, no trace of the HOA Queen's polish. She was handing out flyers, her movements careful, her eyes on the families, not the crowd. When she saw Emma, she paused, her hands tightening on the papers. Then slowly she approached, stopping a few feet away. "Emma," she said, her voice soft, almost lost in the park's noise. "Your playground is incredible. You're amazing." Emma looked at me, hesitant, then at Karen. "Thanks," she said, her tone polite but guarded. "It's for all kids." Karen nodded, her eyes glistening. "It is. I'm so glad." She turned to me, tentative. "James, could I talk to you? Just for a minute?" I glanced at Emma, who was waving to a friend. "Stay with Sarah," I told her, nodding to our caregiver nearby. Karen and I walked to a quieter spot, the laughter of the playground fading behind us. She took a deep breath, her hands twisting together. "I've been trying to find the right words," she said. "What I said about Emma on that broadcast, it was vile. I was so caught up in my own ego, in making Pineview my perfect little world, that I didn't see her. I saw her wheelchair, her ramp, as problems, not as parts of a beautiful girl. I hurt her, I hurt you, and I'll carry that shame forever. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. I'm not the person I was. The support center. It's teaching me to listen, to value people over rules. Emma's courage showed me what I was too blind to see. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want you to know I'm trying to be better. For her, for everyone I wronged. I studied her, searching for the woman who'd pointed at my daughter, her words like knives. She wasn't there. This Karen was humbled, raw, still grappling with her guilt. Why stay? I asked. You could have left, started over. She swallowed, tears spilling. Because leaving would have been cowardly. Facing what I did, learning from it, that's harder. Emma deserves a world where people like me don't hurt her. I want to help build that, even if it's just a tiny piece. I didn't respond right away. The pain of that day was still sharp. Emma's tears a memory I couldn't shake. Emma's stronger than you know, I said finally. But what you did, it changed her. She's fighting to trust again. Don't think a few months of volunteering undoes that. Karen nodded, wiping her eyes. I know. I'll spend my life making amends. Not for absolution, but because it's right. I didn't say more. There was nothing else to say. She returned to her booth and I went back to Emma, who was giggling as she swung with a friend, her purple streamers fluttering. Karen's words lingered, not as healing, but as a challenge, to my anger, my doubt, my belief in second chances. A few weeks later, I received a package, delivered to our doorstep with no return address. Inside was a small, leather-bound notebook, its cover embossed with a swing set. A note was tucked inside, in Karen's neat handwriting. James, I saw Emma's sketches at the community center and thought she deserved a place to keep them safe. This notebook's for her designs, her dreams. I've started a fund at the support center for art supplies for kids with disabilities, inspired by her. It's not enough, but it's a start. I hope she keeps creating. Thank you for letting me see her light, even after everything. Karen. I turned the notebook over, its pages blank but heavy with possibility. It wasn't just a gift, it was an offering, tied to Emma's passion, her resilience. I gave it to her that evening, watching her eyes light up. It's for my playground ideas, she said, already sketching a slide. Did the lady from the park send it? Yeah, I said, my voice soft. She's trying to be kinder. Emma nodded, accepting it with a child's clarity. That's good. She should be nice to everybody. That summer, Pineview Meadows held its first inclusive community festival. No HOA gatekeeping, just neighbors celebrating together. There were art booths, wheelchair races, and a swing set dedication for Emma, her name on a small plaque. Emma's dream. She helped run a drawing station, her hands smudged with chalk, her laughter a melody. I stood nearby, joking with Sarah and Paul, feeling the neighborhood breathe easier, its wounds scabbing over. Karen was there, at a booth for the Disability Support Center, handing out resource guides and talking to parents. She'd grown the art fund, using her call center wages to buy supplies for local schools. It wasn't loud or showy, no cameras, no applause, but it was real. I saw her with a girl in a walker, showing her how to make a paper flower, her smile genuine, unguarded. Later, as the sun dipped low, I found myself near her booth. Emma was with Sarah, eating a popsicle, her latest sketch, a rainbow park, tucked in her new notebook. The art fund's a good thing, I said to Karen, nodding at her flyers. Emma's using that notebook every day. Karen looked surprised, then grateful. It's because of her, she said, her voice catching. She's extraordinary. Thank you, James, for letting me do this, for not hating me forever. I shrugged, not because I didn't care, but because some truths didn't need words. Keep it up, I said. It's making a difference. Her eyes welled, but she smiled, and I walked back to Emma, to the life we'd reclaimed. Emma's still sketching, her playground designs now in schools across the county, her blog a beacon for kids like her. Pineview Meadows isn't flawless, but it's ours. Ramps, laughter, neighbors who see Emma for who she is. Karen's not a friend, not a hero, But she's not the villain anymore. She's someone learning, one choice at a time, and that's enough for now. I'm still James Carter, advocate, dad, keeper of Emma's dreams. I don't have every answer, but I have her courage, Sarah's loyalty, in a community that's trying. Honor isn't in perfection, it's in the fight to include, to grow, to love fiercely. Emma's swing set stands tall, a symbol of what's possible when we choose kindness over control. And that notebook, it's nearly full, bursting with her light. The end.